love to experiment. And sometimes my experiments work really well, and sometimes they're not so good. But that's the nature of experimenting, and that's one of the interesting things when you belong to a professional association with colleagues who are equally willing to try and experiment new wild things. Now, some of us are a little more conservative than others, so some of us are a little less prone to experimentation than others, but some of us are pretty wild and crazy. So I'd like to welcome you to the Institute of Management Consultants Economic Panel. And we have an esteemed panel that we've assembled today, and we've done, we're on the what's called the bleeding edge of technology, as opposed to the leading edge. And we are working with cameras, and we're going to be broadcasting on community access television throughout 4 channels in the Portland metro area. And with us, we have our wonderful panel from San Diego and from Golden, Colorado. And at this point, I'm going to introduce Mr. Bruce Hazen. Bruce is going to be our MC for the evening. And this is the second time we've done an economic panel discussion like this. And Bruce was the panel MC last time, and also Dr. Bill Conerly was with us, and Rudy Miick, who you're going to be meeting in just a moment. So with that, good luck tonight. I'm looking forward to a stimulating conversation on the economy.
That it will be.
Thank you.
As we get started here, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to just give a 1-minute quick introduction of their background, and feel free to exaggerate or tell lies if necessary. So, Bill, would you start?
I'm Bill Conerly. I'm an economist and business advisor. I guide business leaders in developing plans that will be resilient in any economy.
Thanks. Henry.
Hi, I'm Henry DeVries. I'm the CEO of Indie Books International, and I work with consultants who want to attract high-paying clients by marketing with a book and a speech. With the IMC, I'm the conference chair for the ConsultCon 2018, which is going to be held in San Diego, October 5th to 7th. So I hope everybody comes to that. In the past decade, I've worked with over 300 consultants as a ghostwriter, book coach, editor, to help them with a book. In fact, I've written 9 books on my own, including my McGraw-Hill International bestseller, How to Close a Deal Like Warren Buffett, now in Chinese. So I hear I'm big in China. And then on a personal note, I'm a baseball nut. I have visited 42 Major League Baseball parks, and I've got 2 to go before I touch them all.
Henry. Rudy, how about you?
My name is Rudy Miick. I'm based in Boulder, Colorado. I'm a member of Institute of Management Consultants and proud to be a certified management consultant, CMC, with the IMC. My work is now in its 40th year, predominantly focused in 3 areas. One is new project development, growth, and in troubled times, turnarounds, which ultimately turns into growth as well. In all 3 of those areas, our primary focus is leadership communication, fiscal tracking, and we look at I think what sets us apart is that we look at our system as a whole, at our client systems as a whole system. Imagine a water balloon. If we pushed on one side, all that happens is it blobs on the other. So we really look at and hold a system as a whole and expand and contract as needed from a place of purpose, a place of values, a place of passion for work and good living. So that's a background on our work. And Bruce, if I may, as a member of the foundation team for IMC, I'd love to take just another minute and talk a bit about the reason for being for IMC, if I may.
Yes, please do.
So some of you in the room have likely heard about this. The board of directors of Institute for Management Consultants is working on what is being called a reason for being. In other language, it would be a sense of purpose, a broader range, a deeper foundation for our institute and what the institute actually provides each of us as members. So the board of directors are called champions. I sit on a team that is called the foundation team, and I along with a handful of others are kind of leading what are then called sprints. Sprint teams are member-driven work teams. So they're teams focused, not committees that are going to go on forever. But very soon in the weeks to come, you'll start hearing about sprints, which are short-term, high-impact areas of focus by the members themselves in support of our reason for being. So as you hear more about that, know that I and others on the foundation team, coupled with the champions of the board, will be working with fellow members on sprints to really make and take IMC to another level that's much, much more member-driven and visible to the bigger community of business. Thank you.
As a quick introduction, again, my name is Bruce Hazen, and I'm the president of 3 Questions Consulting in Portland. We provide leadership coaching, business model consulting, and career strategy consulting. And as president of 3 Questions Consulting, it makes sense that I'm the question asker tonight. And I'm going to start by asking the first question, really a double question, to Bill, who's going to provide us with an economic overview. And as you prepare us to listen to the overview, give us an idea of what you think consultants should pay attention to in an economic forecast, and then let us know what you see ahead.
All right. You know, it's a great question, because when I am going out to speak to business leaders on the economic forecast, ahead of time, they'll often buttonhole me asking, what do I think about the president or some political issue? Or they'll ask about investments, you know, when can I retire if my 401k or IRA is invested this way? And I keep trying to drag them back to the business. Economics has beauty in many different dimensions, but I'm going to suggest focusing on what does this mean for my business? Now, as a consultant, I think that you can find a conversation opener in almost everything that is said about the economy. As an example, if hypothetically I'm asked what's the biggest challenge business leaders are facing in 2018, today I would say it's the tight labor market. But that's not just an HR issue. If you're doing sales consulting, then a sales manager is having trouble retaining and recruiting people, maybe hiring people with insufficient experience. That's a sales management consultant's area. If you're operations, helping a company through the challenge of a tight market for operations people is good work. If you're in finance, you know, it's like, you don't just say that's an HR issue. There are real balance sheet profit and loss implications from the tight labor market. And that's today's problem. You know, we go back 10 years, it's a recession, then we go to the credit tightening, whether it's interest rates, exchange rates, everything has broad impact on business. So I'd recommend that the consultants think, gee, how can I use this to better serve my clients? So that's the listening thing. In terms of the forecast, quick summary, I'm looking for a little bit more economic growth in the US in 2018, driven by a little bit more consumer spending as wages go up, a little bit more exports. Global economy is growing and the dollar's been low for a while, and a good bit more capital spending, partially on optimism among business leaders and partially because of the tax reform has made capital spending more attractive. I'm not too worried about inflation, but it's the sort of thing where I don't worry about inflation because somebody else is worrying about it. And I keep trying to explain this to my wife, you know, the problems that she's worrying about, I don't have to worry about because, you know, I have confidence in her, the results of her worrying. So I'm just gonna have a beer and read the paper while she worries about whatever it is. And right now the Federal Reserve is worrying about inflation, so I don't need to worry about inflation. I think the Fed will raise interest rates. And it's worth thinking that it's been a decade since we've seen, rising interest rates. There are corporate treasurers who've never had to budget interest expense because interest rates have been so low. And that's going to, I don't think they're going to get real high. I think the Fed is going to raise rates at about a 1/3 throttle. When they're really trying to tighten, they push rates up 3 percentage points in a year. And I'm predicting 1 percentage point in a year. So that's kind of mild. I think it'll be a slightly better year in 2018 and 2019 than we had last year, but not hugely different.
And at this point, how far into this year do you think we'll get before there will be a noticeable change?
How far until, well, I've noticed changes all along, but I watch, month by month, week by week data. I think in the summer, we're going to see more wage acceleration. Right now, the labor market is tight, but we haven't seen it too much in wages. I think that will really pick up steam in the summer.
Do you have a theory, an explanation for why wages in general have been quite suppressed for a long time?
I do. I've just had to come up with one. We economists have been surprised by this. The labor market has tightened, unemployment down to 4.1 nationally, and every place except Alaska has low unemployment these days, but we have not seen much wage pressure. Some of it is baby boomers are retiring, and they're maybe replacing somebody at the upper end of the wage range is being replaced by a young person at the lower end. And when you calculate the average wage, it doesn't look like it's going up. But that person, maybe instead of starting at the bottom end of the wage range, is maybe a quarter of the way up at the beginning, which is more than somebody would have been a few years ago. So it's a data problem. That's the easiest answer. Also, companies have been trying to keep their expenses low, and I think they're fighting to keep their expenses low. And at a time when they probably should be spending more money, they're still digging in their heels. And I think they'll have to have the labor market slap them across the face a couple of times before they let loose on the purse strings.
We'll listen for the slap. The next question is for Rudy. Rudy, you do a lot of work in the hospitality, hotel, resort industries with leaders and strategizing there. I'm interested to know what kinds of upticks and downticks in the economy do you pay attention to that influences your business?
Well, to me, there are two real headlines that come immediately, and I appreciated everything Bill just said. And Bruce, thanks for tracking, because in the background I was going, that slap is coming. So I think one of the real frustrating parts of the hospitality industry across the board, food service specifically, the food service segment in hospitality in general. So within resorts and hotel properties, everybody eats. So there's food and beverage. So the commodity markets, food, everything in food is going up. That said, everything in equipment is going up. So if I have replacement expense, I have repair and maintenance, everything that Bill was alluding to in broad brush, in a very specific way, we're getting hit across the board in the industry with costs going up on raw product and on infrastructure costs. Simultaneously, because wages are low, and I really appreciate what Bill said about the kind of median wage hasn't really, we're making up for that senior level person leaving and getting equivalent work for somebody with less experience. That's the theoretical position. I'm going to take the risk to say that's the theoretical position. The reality is that the great majority of the nation, the middle ground on either the center of either coast, I don't have enough money. I haven't had a raise in so many years that I'm not going to go out to eat unless I can do it for $5, which means fast food is growing, but at 2%. Fast casual is growing at about 1.5% max. But literally people are not able to keep up with the cost of living with certainly to not go out. So sales are exceedingly down, even while the presumed economy as a whole is up. Sales are down, and both workers are getting ready to slap. We're seeing little pieces of that, but even the communities themselves are really struggling to go out to dinner or to get carry-out food even. So it's a real conundrum that we're sitting with. I could ramble on, let me stop there.
Well, one quick follow-up question. I'm guessing that would drive a lot of your consulting business toward higher end resorts and restaurants who aren't suffering from this wage suppression issue. Would that be
I'm sorry, please finish. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Would that be an accurate assumption that
Yes. So the assumption is, so if we look at a handful of publicly traded companies, Vail Resorts is a great example, traded as MTN, Mountain. The share price has gone up exponentially, almost 300% in the last 3 years. Simultaneously, their sales, as one would expect, their sales are going up. However, the slice of the community, global community that they have coming to the resorts has gotten, the attrition is moving higher and higher to the tip of the pyramid of the highest earners. So the less guests, higher sales. And in resorts across the board, that is what's occurring. And then at the extreme low end, all in one inclusive pricing, low end resorts, that margin, that location is also growing. The middle, the kind of, hey, I want to go and I want to pick and choose what I want to do at an affordable price, those are the companies that are really hurting economically.
Tends to fit the picture we keep hearing and seeing.
Yeah, so it's just a really intriguing economic dialogue. On a national level, the economy is moving. On a livable, real-time, real human being perspective, people in the great majority of the country are in pain, is my experience, operationally.
Thanks, Rudy. The next question I've got, Henry, is for you, and it's in your field of marketing communications. Wondering if these economic indicators we're hearing about from Bill, are they changing the kind of marketing consulting you're doing or the kind of advice you're offering to your typical clients?
So thank you. This is Henry. And I talked to several business owners in preparation for this, and they're nervous. There's this nervousness out there that, okay, a recession has to come. When's it going to come? And some are spending right now in getting prepared for it, in getting marketing programs and marketing materials ready. It's interesting from the conference standpoint in that the IMC conference does better in bad times. Because in good times, consultants are too busy serving clients and making money to come and learn how to do it better or to improve marketing. In bad times, the numbers are up because they have to learn how to do something. So sometimes marketing is counter to the cycle. It's like good news, bad news, good news. So right now, people are doing well. The bigger companies, like I have a Fortune 50 company, they've got a lot of money on the sidelines that they haven't decided what to do with, and what programs they want to put it in, and do they want to prepare for things right now. So that's the other thing that we see out there. From the consumer standpoint, I not only echo what people have said, I feel it too. We have to make choices about, how much fine dining are we going to do versus we're so busy, I guess we better go to Chick-fil-A tonight and get a sandwich. So there's those pressures that are going on even in our household.
Henry, do you find that your client companies aren't really trying to thaw out the frozen middle? They're going for the upper end and the lower end then?
Yes. And I have two clienteles. I have the independent consultants who, want to go from 100,000 to 200,000, and they're looking what's going to change the game for them. And then I also have the larger corporate clients who want to do things, and it might be a legacy book to build culture. They're more concerned with what Bruce was talking about, the coming wage employee talent fight and how to continue to be the employer of choice. I just joked about a fast food restaurant. I've seen signs where they're looking to hire people at $13 an hour and more. They're competing already. I know In-N-Out, their strategy for years has not been to get the lowest wage, but to get the best low-wage employees they can, so that people will want to dine there versus their other choices.
Before we started the panel here tonight, I was speaking with Bill about some of his research around this tightening labor market, and you saw it coming 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And basically named 2017 as the year that it would hit, and we would hear the big slap. Well, I'm curious, given this, when, if we project ahead a little bit farther, when would you say the labor tight market will start to relent?
When will the tight labor market relent? Well, if you want to live to see that, get regular exercise, watch your cholesterol, check your blood pressure.
Okay.
The demographics are huge here. So baby boomers are retiring, and it's not just people born in 1946. The peak year for births was 57. So a boomer born at the peak is turning, I'm not good with numbers, but about 61 this year.
Yeah.
And so we've got, and then there's others who are boomers through about 64. So we've got 10 years of boomers aging out. The millennials are already in the workforce, those who are working, but they're working age. And the folks born after the millennials is a thinner number of people. So we've got a lot of people going out, not many people coming in, and foreign immigration is way down, way down. In fact, if Donald Trump were to call me and ask for advice, which he has not done, I would say, declare that you have finished building the wall. And if anybody questions you, just point to the immigration statistics, because we're getting little immigration. And the decade from 2020 to 2030 will have less growth of the working age population, aged like 20 to 60, less growth than we've had back to 1850. So like virtually nothing, which means if a business has a vision of expanding, they need to think, how are we going to be better at retention? How are we going to be better at recruiting? How are we going to be better using technology? And if they don't have a vision of expansion, they have to recognize that every good employee has a target on the shirt, and other employers are going to try to steal them.
Yes.
So in 2030, it'll start to ease up, but the companies that are surviving in 2030 will be those that really dialed up their game on employee retention, recruitment, and technology.
Right.
Should we set our calendar watches now?
Okay.
Okay. Rudy, you've got an idea, a question?
Well, no, I really appreciate what Bill just said. Is figure out the retention game. Actually, I'm going to back up. Yes to what Bill just said. To me, there are a couple things that stand out. When Henry was just speaking, I would agree with the comments made. There's cash out there, and because of the economic, geopolitical, nationalistic, whatever positions, economic blended with geopolitical, there's money available by business owners to spend, but there's real caution in what to do with it because I don't know when the shoe's going to drop. Not the labor market slapping us, but when's the recession going to hit? Because something's going to blow. And that tied with, I'm just so confused with the economics. We're up, and yet it doesn't feel like we're up, right? That's first. Second, to Bill's point about the attrition of boomers, Gen X is going to slide in. Millennials, here we go. And we think so much, most business owners that I meet and work with see millennials as such problem. X coming. I think it's going to be faster than Bill alluded to, but it's definitely, Xers are young. So, but the opportunity for X and millennials, that wave coming in, is they do love sense of purpose. They do love passion. They do love a reason, dare I go here, a reason for being at work. And so that in building a business culture economically, investing in the culture as a brand, an internal brand. We hear you, we inspire you, we inspire each other. That, let alone the Coke machines or the whatever machines that are around ping pong tables and stuff. To me, that stuff is superficial. But the real essence of I'm inspired to come to work, that retention is going to be the secret. And in my mind, has been the secret for the last 10 years anyway. It really has. So I see that as a real opportunity for business owners. That meaning define purpose, define the big why, define values, and use them as tools. The other big concern that I do have that is maybe we haven't really alluded to yet is where does artificial intelligence sit? Where do robotics sit? Those are other big questions for us economically that some industries like hospitality, manufacturing, where am I going to go to work? And those are just, I'm going to sit on the money I do have until I figure that out. And those go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Henry.
Henry, I'd be interested also in what Bill has to say on how boomers are going to reinvent retirement.
Yep.
So they won't be working full time, but they're going to be working. They're going to find an encore thing to do. And I don't know if it's working down at the pro shop at the golf course or if it's going to be filling these things in the service industry. There's a lot of things that don't have purpose in life, but need to be done, and you'll make money for it. And then I can take the money and go out to that nice restaurant that I'd like to go out to, or have the nice vacation up in Vail with it. So, Bill, I don't know if I can put that to you. Do you have a crystal ball on that?
Well, let me first say that it's easier for us humans to put people in categories and deal with the categories. But we need to understand that that's a shorthand. And as far as I know, every individual is unique.
Yeah,
and I
would agree with that.
Back when I was in high school, a buddy and I double dated identical twins. And I learned that those girls were different, one from another. So many millennials, want purpose. Some of them are just show me the cash. Many Seniors want a sense of purpose after they leave their primary job. Some of them don't. But I think that many of the older people 65 and older, would like to be doing work. And in some cases, volunteer work is enough. Other cases, they'd like a little extra income. But the key to using them is flexibility. They don't want to be on the high stress, demanding job pattern. If you allow them to not come in at rush hour, take Fridays off, in the winter, take 6 weeks and head to Arizona, they'll be a lot happier. And they're willing to accept less money, like 20% less, to have that flexibility. The business challenge that we'll have to wrestle with if we do this is, how do you have seniors on the low stress, high flex program working side by side with 40-year-olds on the high stress, no flex program without animosity, even more animosity than
Right.
we currently have? And I trust you guys to figure that one out.
Bill,
So basically, it sucks to be you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rudy.
no. Yeah, I don't know about Bill, to your, thank you for calling out the stereotypes. Bravo. It wasn't my intention to, I so agree with what you said. So I'll just leave it at that. Henry, if I dare, the hospitality industry, especially the resort industry, and Bruce, to your point, if the hospitality industry, resorts especially, are a great example of what Henry, you were just talking about, and Bill especially. If I use two examples, both in food service, but more so in the ski or summer resort industries. I'm gonna stay with winter resorts for a second, just because it's summer. We're getting close to summer. So imagine here's this industry, and somebody's been a 9-to-5 boomer their whole career, and depending on whether it's their passion or purpose, I retire. I'm 60 years old. I've been a decent skier or snowboarder or climber, and all of a sudden, man, I can go teach skiing and have fun and get paid some money per hour, but make, especially at good resorts, I can make tips, right? And so here comes the retired boomer that's full of passion and go, you know what, Henry, no problem. I don't need to worry about money. I'll be happy to work for $12 an hour, which that's not a livable wage in the Vail Valley or in Aspen or Sun Valley or Bachelor even. Try living on $12 an hour.
Right.
So what ends up happening is I show up in my late 50s, 60s, full of passion with good intention to live a purposeful life and to spread the joy of the industry. But then side by side comes a 25-year-old that wants to be a career instructor. They can't at 18, 19, or 25 live on $12 an hour. And oh, by the way, the business model, they don't get paid unless they teach. So they don't get paid because they don't get work because they're low on the totem pole. And I take their work because I've got skills and I know how to talk to other boomers that are paying $1,000 a day for a lesson. And all of a sudden, I and my passion become part of the problem that actually denigrates a livable economy in a valley or in a mountain town. And frankly, so I live in the high country of the Rockies, but I was raised in Hawaii. In summer resorts, Hawaii, Costa Rica, South America, Panama, you name it, Mexico, the same issue is occurring. So we have this conundrum of we can't really build new careers because the model doesn't work. And the very passion that we're alluding to undercuts, creates a paradox. There's not a, to Bill's point, there's not a simple answer here. It's got to be a combination of vision of a company and a blending of how do I build new and celebrate the old.
I think to your point, this is Henry, I think to your point and also Bill's point, all the old rules are gone.
Bingo.
It's all going to be a new dynamic here. It's also for the, consultants. It used to be no one was out of work. They were just consulting. It was something they were doing to get them to the next real job. And then that's changed. And I'm talking to people in their 60s and 70s who say, how do I not retire from consulting? I don't want to do it as hard, but I don't want to quit this. I'm enjoying this. So they're having to reinvent themselves. I'm saying every few years. I think I have to reinvent myself in the next few years. I think there'll be a lot of reinvention in this economy. And, shame on you. Whatever happens with, I was looking at checking off everything Bill's predicting, labor market, recession, interest rates, whatever, shame on you. Don't blame that. Figure out where the opportunity is and go for it in those changing times. And as my mother said, I stereotype because it saves time. So sorry if I stereotype there. And Bill, maybe some other time you can tell me, did those twins ever go to the restroom and you think came back and Mary said she was Marcia and Marcia said she was Mary?
Not to my knowledge, but I wouldn't.
Okay. Touche.
Back to a comment you made, Bill, about some decision makers who are not making certain moves, taking certain decisions, not raising wages, for example, being some reluctancies. If we believe that demographics are destiny, we look for a minute at the fact that most of the people in senior and middle decision-making positions in our country, in our economy today, lived through the recession and got burned, no matter what industry they were in. Are they reluctant decision makers now in certain regards because of that? And when do you think they're going to get hit with the next recession?
That's two questions. I was all set to answer one, and then you threw another one in at the end.
I usually go for three, but I'm going to let you off.
Yeah. We're all creatures of our experience, right? And there's evidence that people who went through the Great Depression, their attitudes were different. And I think people who went through the Great Recession, their attitudes are different. And throw the dog a bone. And the people who, I think the millennials today, people who are like 30, 10 years ago, they were watching parents lose houses, lose jobs. I think this is a very financially conservative generation. And so the CEOs today, they went through a harsh recession. They survived it. And I think that colors their willingness. Cash being held by large corporations, record high, both in dollars and in percent of GDP. So it's going to take them a while to adjust to the new world, but eventually they adjust because some competitor starts cleaning their clock by having made the adjustment a little bit sooner.
Okay.
So when will the next recession hit? It will hit on about blah, blah, blah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So I don't have a recession in my forecast out the next 3 years, but the economics profession is very poor at predicting recessions. So don't wait until you hear a forecast from me. It may happen sooner than that. So I recommend to everybody, business, nonprofit, and government, to have a recession contingency plan. Sketch out. It's a one-page exercise, not a three-ring binder exercise, unless you're hiring me to help develop the plan, in which case we ought to fill up a couple of three-ring binders. But the do-it-yourself version is one page. What are you going to do? What are the major issues? And the contingency plan for a downturn, and also do one for the upturn, but the contingency plan means that if you've just sketched out what you'll do, you'll execute it faster.
Yeah.
Not only will you execute it faster, you'll execute it smarter. Because in a relaxed environment, you could say, what are our corporate values? What's our corporate strategy? And make sure that your contingency plan is consistent with that, rather than, oh, all of a sudden we're not meeting Wall Street expectations. We got to do something, do anything, and then you do something stupid. So contingency plans for the downside and a contingency plan for the upside. A lot of people say, hey, I'm ready for upside, but they may not have the working capital, may not have the people, may not have the equipment, the locations. So after you do the downside contingency plan, do an upside contingency plan.
Nice.
One last question for all of you. Given that consultants are often brought in and respected for their ability to have a little bit of over-the-horizon radar, that is to give their clients a look ahead and to be able to see some things that maybe our clients don't see. Can you think of any good examples of times that you've brought in either an economic perspective or a labor market perspective that helped one of your client companies anticipate and see over the horizon? And what data did you bring them to help them see that?
This is Henry. In the financial services industry, when I was working in there and think large insurers, that nature, we did issues tracking. And we were looking at a number of issues and just, it sounds silly, but we used a system called the 4-banana system. And one banana was green, so that's an issue that, oh, it's an issue, but we don't know if it's going to hit us. And then there was a yellow issue with like, okay, well, this is coming and we need to pay attention to it. We had a specked with brown issue, meaning, okay, we have to address this right now. That's kind of like make banana bread out of it. And then we had a thing called a banana peel. A banana peel was when the auditors were coming in. The federal government had to talk to us. The Boston Globe included us in an expose of the industry, and we had to argue that we weren't corrupt. We were just not organized and needed to do better. So that was one example. And I think as a consultant, a lot of people, I find the clients are busy doing it. And one perspective they miss is, what are other people doing? And that's why I argue that we can do proprietary research on an industry. We can't tell them what IBM is doing or what Hewlett Packard is doing or Xerox is doing, but we can aggregate some data and tell them trends about the industry, about if spends are going up, spends are going down, if other people are worried about a certain issue and if they're taking action. So I think that's a role that we can play.
Thanks, Henry. Rudy, anything for you?
Yeah, we've got two things, although I love the 4-banana thing, man. It's way cool. Two pieces. For us, we run and recommend cash flow management as if things are always tight. Even if we have cash, we run tight. That doesn't mean that we don't invest in good times. So there's an ROI, a return on investment for the investment. At the same time, any sort of production cash flow, we run as if we are always out of cash. Buy only what we need for this week. Buy only what we need until the next truck. Buy only what we need until this production run, no matter how much cash we've got. That leaves us cash for big expenditures if suddenly the banana is bruised. Dare I start using your analogy, Henry? That's first. Second is we create mission teams. Again, not committees. So in our client systems, we create teams that are focused and have a mission with objectives and tasks. And one of those teams in each environment, in each client system is typically an environmental scan. Not unlike the bananas. It's not as cool and simple as the bananas. I love it. But it is a process of one person tracking news media, one tracking competitors, one tracking weather, one tracking the neighborhood in and out, home sales, etc. One tracking shipment volume, either in dollars, pounds, or miles. And that team reports out. So the people change on the team, but the team is consistently reporting to the owner or to the board of directors and says, hey, here's the interesting information that we found. Add that to our values and our sense of purpose for being. And we will say, what is the issue? Here are our purpose and our values. How do we get to the solution? So that we're staying in the present, not fearing the past or the future and we're using real-time data to anticipate a smart move.
Nice. So you build your own over-the-horizon radar system.
We teach people to look over the horizon themselves. My closing statement on this would be, the world is done with black and white answers. Business for us anymore, we just devoutly believe that almost every decision is a paradox. And the more information we can attain in the moment and teach people to decide things from that context, the healthier the company will be.
Sounds like you're practicing VUCA consulting.
I'm not sure what VUCA is, but we are looking over the horizon for sure.
VUCA stands
volatile, volatile, uncertain. What's the C and the A? They use this at the War College. Complex and
ambiguous.
Well,
ambiguous. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, I would say we are. Here, it's time for me to go back to school. Do terminology.
Oh no, you're just.
So you got VUCA and bananas.
There you go. It's got bananas.
And
So before I answer the question, just a quick banana point. With a company that for various reasons had to monitor 20 different metrics on a monthly basis. And the executive team would go over them, and it would take a couple of hours once a month. And if you think about 7 senior people, the cost, their meter is just spinning around. And so we did a color code. Green means this measure is just fine. Yellow means, okay, we could see it going into a problem area. Red means you need to pay attention to it. They skipped over the green. They spent 5 minutes on the yellows, and then they put all their time onto the red. They spent more time on the important issues and less time overall. It was huge. So whether you call it bananas or color coding, and that's a tool I think we can use left and right.
Yeah.
And now, in terms of over the horizon radar, I'm going to point backwards. Much of the most valuable stuff I have done, even though I consider myself a professional forecaster, has been looking backwards. So a company has 3 lines of business. 2 of them are going great guns. The third is lousy. And the CEO is thinking about getting rid of the head of the 3rd division. Well, I look at how that division, how that product line in the economy varies over the business cycle. And I said, this sector is always slow to recover. It's just part of the normal thing. Give it 6 months, it's going to take off. Or calibrating, do we have a problem with pricing, marketing, or is it just the stage of the economy? And looking backward has been some of the most valuable stuff I've done. So I would encourage people to look at your history.
Yeah. And prevent forward-looking mistakes.
Right.
Well, there's what a great example, Bill, of both and again, right? Instead of one thing, here we are at this both and.
Yeah.
Bravo.
So let's switch now to all of you and any questions you may have for any of the panelists. Jerry, I know you've got a question. You just don't know what it is.
Regarding consulting in good times and bad times. Being in the Northwest, I kind of get the idea that consulting is like being a salmon. Whether the times are good or bad, you're always swimming upstream. And that's because when times are good, clients don't think they need you. And when times are bad, they can't afford you. So the conclusion I've come to is that the larger companies that have cash can always afford you, and particularly these days. The smaller companies, and I've done some analysis of my own business from pre-recession to post-recession, and the total amount of revenue hasn't changed very much, but the amount that the small companies have committed has come in smaller chunks. So they're making very reserved decisions about the length of engagements and the amount of cash that they'll commit. They have the cash, but they're committing it in smaller chunks. What that means is that the selling cycle needs to be repeated quite a bit more. So what I've recognized is that there are probably 3 times the value of transactions that need to be closed to create the same amount of backlog and revenue. And I don't know if the gentleman on the panel will agree. That's my statement.
Well, this is Henry. What I'm advising people is that they should seek to book a third more than what they need in revenue. So if you want 30,000 in revenue, you should be booking 40,000 in agreements, because even though you have an agreement and they have a budget, the consultants we've been monitoring is that it doesn't all reach them. So, you know, figure 75% is actually going to reach and hit. So Jerry, thanks. To your point, you don't need just enough in this. You need to be going for more than you need.
My 2 cents would be yes to everything that was said, and there's just more caution. It's just more conversation before I spend. Okay, let's do it. Let's dig.
Other questions, comments? Yeah, Alyssa, come on up. And we'll ask you to embarrass yourself also by standing right in the
I'm going
middle.
to put you on the spot, Bill.
Uh-oh. Introduce yourself and
So
face the
I'm
camera.
Lisa Blum, just because I'm a worrier, but I see a couple trends that are disturbing. One are baby boomers that haven't saved enough for retirement. The other are millennials with huge college debt going into a really insanely expensive housing market. So it concerns me when I look at the economy overall in the future and how that's all going to manifest itself.
Yeah, I don't need that. The boomers not saving enough for retirement, our data are weak on this. Savings rates are not as high as they should be, but we know there are a lot of intergenerational transfers. So a lot of people 60 years old have a parent who's passing away and they're inheriting, you know, sometimes 50,000, 100,000, $250,000, and that's just sort of gravy in terms of the savings. And so I don't have a good handle. I think without a doubt, some boomers are going to be in trouble in 20 years, but others are going to be just fine. It's one of these generalizations things. In terms of young people with student debt, it's actually kind of encouraging. I did a little work on student loans, and the people with the highest amounts outstanding of student loans were people who got graduate degrees in, and the top one was healthcare. Doctors, veterinarians, dentists, and they're hugely in debt, but they've got, you know, huge incomes coming. The dicey area is lawyers, because unless you're really finishing at the top of law school, you may end up making $50,000, $70,000 a year with over $100,000 in debt. But the people who are like defaulting on their loans, who are really struggling, are the people who borrowed $5,000 to go to community college, didn't finish community college, don't have much to show for their semester, and now they got $5,000 in debt. So yeah, I don't think it's an economy-wide problem, but it's certainly a problem for those people who borrow.
I would conclude with one sum-up statement tonight. We should all mark the date and the time that we sat in this room and heard this discussion, because for the first time, we talked about a series of questions and a series of answers and a series of needs in our society that can no longer be solved by bankers, venture capitalists, and accountants. And we've run our businesses and our governments and our communities off of spreadsheets, as if all the answers were in the spreadsheet. And we finally hit the wall that you predicted 10 years ago. It's a wall that doesn't yield to further calculations. It yields to managing humans in a way that's better than you used to do it. So we'll see what consulting questions and solutions we come up with next time. Hope you'll all be there.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.